Go Stormwater. Hey, that's a great segue into stand up and just stretch, right? Everybody take 15 seconds and stand up and stretch. Ken, if you're taking notes on how to improve this, water doesn't fit on this slope real well here. I mean, yeah, this is a gutter, a storm gutter right here. So we may be raining on my shoes today. I'm glad everybody, I know most of you took my suggestion to stand up and stretch for a minute. Can't thank all of you enough for sticking around, listening to this incredible panel on stormwater infrastructure. Ken, thanks for having us. Thanks for having all the panelists. Those of you in the audience that were a panelist today or a moderator, thank you for doing that and sharing your expertise and some of the things that you've learned in the industry. As Ken had said, my name is Josh Herschel. I work for Advanced Drainage Systems. We're a water management solutions provider. On top of providing stormwater needs in infrastructure in both green and in gray, all across the United States, Canada, Mexico, and South America, we're also one of the nation's largest recyclers of plastic. We recycled over 600 million pounds of plastic out of landfills and took that from a 30-day product with a product with a 30-day life cycle like a Tide bottle and recycled that into stormwater infrastructure that has a 100-year service life. So one of the great things that we do as a company besides stormwater management. Our panel discussion today, I'm really excited that we have such a diverse in terms of demographics and geography and population. We have Lou Serino with Metropolitan Water Reclamation District. And I'm going to go through a little bit about those demographics that I talked about, but MWRD services about 10 million people. So massive, right? We're in your service area right now. So thank you for servicing all of us today. Next to him, we have Tim Kingsland. Tim's with Hobart Stormwater Management District in Hobart, Indiana. They serve about a 30,000 population. Big difference in management of a different of the population. Next to me here, we have Troy Lambert, environmental analyst at the city of Sioux Falls. They service about 200,000 population. So 3 different states perspective, 3 different populations perspective. I hope, and I think that we're going to get a great diverse conversation today. So all of you, thank you for being on the panel. If we could, maybe you all could take a minute and talk a little bit of an introduction about yourselves. And then really let's talk about the major concern for your agencies, whether that be your concern, whether that be your public constituents' concern, that could revolve around water quality, water quantity, funding, weather, climate interaction, climate change. Thank you for that last panel. That was a great segue into this one. You can also talk about whether that main concern is green infrastructure, gray infrastructure, or a mix in between. Troy?
You got it. All right. Thank you, Josh. Thank you, Ken and for Dave for allowing me to come out here and talk with you all. And thank you, everyone, for hanging out for the last session here. I greatly appreciate it. But my name's Troy Lambert. As Josh said, I'm with the city of Sioux Falls, South Dakota. We have an approximate population of about 200,000 people. The MSA itself is about 250. In our immediate area. I've been an environmental analyst for the last 2 years, and that's kind of just a collection of various environmental regulatory compliance items that we as a municipality must abide by. So myself and the team of analysts coordinate those programs. Our main program that we oversee is our MS4 program, the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Stormwater. And a lot goes into that, but there's also a lot of initiatives around green infrastructure and how we can manage our stormwater more efficiently and maybe in a more sustainable way as well. Some of the issues that we see in Sioux Falls as it relates to stormwater is the number one, which I'm sure is no surprise to anyone, is flooding. A lot of our community was built close to the river, way closer than any community would be built nowadays. So we do have an extensive system of levees throughout town to kind of do some flood control, and those require maintenance, obviously, to keep updated up to requirements with. And then our area, Sioux Falls, has seen rapid population growth. In the last 5-10 years. We've added 3,000 people, I think, a year for the last few years now. So that requires extensive planning and a lot of prioritization of systems. And unfortunately, stormwater, while it's there, we did some initial planning up front a while back, and we do regular planning. But when it comes to population growth, it's where are these people moving? How are these people going to get from point A to B? So you're looking at housing, roads. Like I said, stormwater's in that equation, but it's kind of on the back side of that equation. When it comes to the stormwater infrastructure, I would say our biggest issue is the overall maintenance of it. Like I said, we have a system of levees that are required. There's significant required maintenance that goes into those systems every year. We have a team of 4 that solely do levee and stormwater maintenance for the entire city, and that's a taxing endeavor for that team. Not including the levee, but we have a number of stormwater detention ponds, city-owned stormwater detention ponds, drainage channels, and also the gray infrastructure that we have to service on a regular basis and throughout the year. So I would say, given all those options, just the general maintenance of everything is probably our top concern.
Thanks, Troy. I think we can all relate. Tim?
My name's Tim Kingsland. I'm with the city of Hobart. If you're from Hobart, you say Hobart, but if you're outside the town, you say Hobart. So that's how I'm not a original from Hobart. I'm from central part of Illinois, grew up there, moved up to northwest Indiana in about 2000 and been up here ever since. My official title is the Hobart Sanitary Stormwater Coordinator. What's a coordinator? People will ask me, and I say, well, whatever they want me to be for that day. Because when I got hired by the district, they didn't have a job description. They told me to create my own. So I've been developing that for the last 14 years now. And but it's been a fun ride. Primary why I was brought in was my stormwater background. I've been working in the engineering consulting field for a number of years. And I don't want to give away my age, but you can tell by my hair that I've been around for a while. But the primary thing is that the city of Hobart is like a bedroom community, even though it's in Indiana. It's like a burb of Chicago. Everybody from south of Indiana thinks we're part of Chicago, and when you're up in Chicago, thinks we're a bunch of hicks from Indiana. But you hear it all, and you kind of take it in stride. But basically, if anybody's familiar with Northwest Indiana, the hydrology of the area, we have a high water table, and because of high water table, we have a lot of lakes, we have a lot of streams, we have a lot of rivers. City of Hobart was found on a river. Back in the 1840s, a gentleman from England called George Earle founded Hobart. And basically why he developed the city there is that the Potawatomi Indians who had lived there before the event of the settlers from Europe and other places called it was their meeting place. All the tribes would go there once a year, and they would have a big celebration of water. And basically, when George Earle came in, basically he built a grist mill that dammed up Deep River, was formed Lake George. And basically, we're one of the few towns around in Indiana that has a river that flows right through the middle of town. And that's where water is very important to the city, because water has been the life of Hobart. And there's really 3 issues that on the stormwater side that we look at from Hobart. We look at water quality, quantity, and the sedimentation of Lake George, because the flow of Deep River is very slow. So we have a lot of sediment that deposits into Lake George, because a lot of the upstream communities are rural or they basically dump anything I shouldn't say that, but they discharge into the lake as what they can. And the farmers are in Indiana they don't have to comply with the MS4 rules like the city does. So we do get a lot of runoff. They've gotten better on various conservation practices, but back in the early 2000s, the city of Hobart spent over $2 million to partially dredge Lake George. We were looking at dredging the lake again in the last couple of years, but the price and where you can deposit the silt from dredging is almost impossible. The cost was in the millions, and where to deposit it is because they consider it as somewhat of not a toxic, but a hazardous type waste, because Deep River is considered as a water impaired waterway under 303D. So it makes a challenge for the staff who works for the city of Hobart to try to maintain the infrastructure that has made this city great for what it is, and that's the water. And so back in 2016, NERC, who was here earlier today, conducted a watershed management plan. And now that watershed management plan, they develop a TMDL. And does anybody know what a TMDL is? Oh my God. It's basically what pollutants are in the water that are causing the water to be impaired. Some of the problems we have is because of agriculture. We have phosphates, nitrates. We have a problem with E. coli. Some of it's naturally occurring, but some of it's not, because we do have a couple of communities upstream that are CSO. You guys know what a CSO is? Okay. So, so the water quality of Deep River has gotten better through that watershed management plan that was developed through our local regional planning agency. We did improve. My goal, I don't think it will happen, but my goal is trying to get the Deep River off the water impaired list. But it's going to be a challenge because it's going to require a regional solution, not a city of Hobart solution, because we're just one of the many. Deep River drains probably almost a third of Lake County, where we're located in. This is in Indiana, because so there's a lot of water that goes through here, and it goes right into Lake Michigan. And as you know, Lake Michigan is one of the Great Lakes and the biggest source of fresh water in the world. So what we put in our water is dependent on so many states and Canada when it comes to the water quality of Lake Michigan. So we're trying to do our part to ensure water quality. Quantity has always been an issue. Back in 2008, we had a flood that pretty well took out downtown. And at the time, our high school was built downtown, and the football field, which wouldn't be able to be done today, was built in the floodplain, and they lost the use of the football field for a while. But it's always an issue. We have done a lot of infrastructure projects trying to reduce the amount of flooding, which I think we've done a pretty good job. And then the sedimentation, which I indicated earlier. One of the things that I've found out through the years is how do we treat for water quality? And the BMP that I like to use is green infrastructure. Does anybody use green infrastructure? It can work. It can work. You can use it for gray water, and you can also use it for stormwater. The problem with green infrastructure is that you have to be committed to it. It's like planting a garden at home. You can't just leave it. You have to put time and effort into it. And we probably since 2016, we spent probably close to $1 million in green infrastructure projects. That's how sincere. I've been very fortunate to secure a number of grants that have been able to subsidize the cost of the green infrastructure. Putting native plants in the ground is not cheap, and to maintain them over a period of time is not cheap. But it does make a difference. We have we've had 3 projects that I really am proud of. One is at City Hall. We put a rain garden, an actual rain garden. It's not a garden that looked to be pretty, but it's a functional. We designed the parking lot to drain into the rain garden, and because Deep River's probably about 50 steps away from City Hall. So that's how close we are. So everything that was discharging to Deep River at the time was not being treated. Now it's being treated through the rain garden and then into the river, well, Lake George right there.
Hey, Tim.
Yeah.
Could I explain some of the acronyms that you used?
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's okay.
It's just something that.
No, that's all right. So a CSO is a combined sewer overflow,
Right.
right? Often combined with an SSO, which is a sanitary sewer overflow. You can Google that more if you want to learn more. TMDL, total maximum daily load. Is that correct? So
Yes.
that's a scientific term for the concentration of the contaminants in the water. And then BMP, which she threw in there and didn't ask if anybody knew, is also the acronym is best management practice. In the stormwater industry, often referred to as best management practices. Those are efforts that agencies take into play in order to remove the 3 things that Tim had said: either improve water quality, reduce water quantity, or decrease sedimentation into waterways. So and we learned a little bit here today. Tim, can we get back to you and let Lou talk a little bit about?
I'm sorry. It's at the end of the day, you kind of
Yeah, that's all right. Lou, go right ahead. Just introduce yourself, and then I'll get into one of your questions. Go right ahead.
I'm Lou Strino, and I'm with the Metropolitan Water Reclamation District of Greater Chicago. At the MWRD, we collect and treat wastewater from the city of Chicago and 127 other municipalities surrounding the city, so the suburbs basically. But we also have a stormwater authority over Cook County. So one of the biggest concerns that I have is just the amount of more intense rainfall that we've been seeing and the reoccurrences of that. And much of our system is a combined sewer system, so it captures both sanitary sewer plus rainwater that flows off from the street into the interceptor, and that all comes over to the treatment plant. In the separate systems, just the sanitary sewer goes over this treatment plant. But we see that both in combined and separate systems, their level of service is still not adequate for these intense rainstorms. And so, you often hear in the news the 100-year rainstorm just happened, and then 3 months later, the 100-year rainstorm just happened. But it just happened in Park Ridge. 3 months later, it's happening in a southern suburb, let's say of Harvey. But still, both communities need to be prepared to react to all the water that's coming down.
Well, interesting, Lou and Tim and Troy, they all brought up one common theme is that the infrastructure from yesterday isn't working today. And that may be because today's a bit different. The weather storms and the climate is surely different. The frequency and the intensity of our rain events is sure different. So one of the things, all of you, Tim, you talked about some of the projects that you worked on, but Troy, maybe can you talk a little bit about a couple of projects that you've done differently? What have you started doing differently in the city of Sioux Falls in regards to quantity, quality, sedimentation, green infrastructure, gray infrastructure, just maybe 1 or 2 projects?
Yeah, so I'd say within the last 5 years, we've, as a municipality, kind of started taking green infrastructure a little more seriously than we probably did in the past, and that has recently accumulated into 3 city-owned green infrastructure rain garden installations. These are in areas prone to flooding. They're in the older area of town where the storm sewer system is not adequate to handle the amount of flow that it's receiving today. So what we did is, starting back in 2012, I want to believe, is we started a voluntary buyout of flood-prone properties in these areas, where we would offer, fair market value for these homes to the buyers. It was totally up to the seller or the owner if they wanted to sell these homes. We finally got enough about 3 years ago, met a full city block. So we wanted to utilize that area, in a higher way than just green space. Once these houses were removed, they would fill in the basements with sand, kind of create a little PLD kind of thing for a little detention. But we wanted to use it more for an educational opportunity, more of a showcase on what we could do as a city, and also what private developers could do in some of their adjacent developments in the newer areas of town that they're that they're developing. So beginning in 2021, we started this green infrastructure rain garden bio retention cell that would collect water off the street in these low areas, and then it would designed to slowly infiltrate in that area, and then any overflow obviously would be discharged into the current storm sewer system. And we've planted it with native vegetation. Like I said, did a bioretention area to have some level of treatment for the smaller events, but like I said, the larger events, would just flow through once the basin is filled up. But we are in year 2 going on this project, and there is definitely a level of maintenance that we knew existed, or we knew would exist, but we kind of just didn't want to think about it. And we're having some of those growing pains right now when it comes to getting the maintenance scheduled on, for these sites, and just kind of the wear and tear that our winters have taken on it.
Can you, Troy, give some examples of that maintenance? Is it replacement of media? Is it weeding? What are all the things, to give some examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So the biggest thing right now is there was a slight design flaw. We overseeded with native grasses, plants, flowers, and whatnot. But then we did some plugs of some sedges and some various other wetland native plants. Well, it was the plants were done in a way where we couldn't get any equipment through that area to treat the larger grass areas. So what has happened is now that same team of 4 that I mentioned earlier, that's in charge of city-owned storm drainage property, they have to go out there and basically do it by hand because they can't get a mower in between the the sedges and the bushes that they planted in there. So they're going through, they're doing hand picking, weeding, spraying, and it's turned into be a bigger project than anticipated. But
sounds like a great summer job for my son.
Oh yeah,
if he's willing to spend the summer in Sioux Falls.
Hey, we'll welcome him.
Lou, MWRD has a number of programs that also have a number of projects underneath all of those programs. Can you maybe shed some light on some of the highlights of those programs that are doing a great job managing stormwater?
Definitely. At the district, we received the Stormwater Authority in 2004. We put together a Cook County Stormwater Management Plan in 2007. And out of that plan came different programs. And one is the Stormwater Partnership Program. The Stormwater Partnership Program funds projects in Cook County that address flooding and drainage concerns. These projects utilize a variety of traditional engineered solutions, such as localized detention, upsizing critical storm sewers and culverts, pumping stations, and establishing drainage ways, alongside with green infrastructure. Projects are prioritized on their ability to reduce flooding and the number of structures benefited, among other criteria. Since 2013, over 50 projects have been approved by our board and put in place, and we're happy to collaborate on those projects. We also have a green infrastructure and space to grow program. The MWRD incorporates green infrastructure within the system. In 2015, we adopted the Green Infrastructure Plan to increase investment throughout the county. Since then, the district has partnered to fund projects using green infrastructure best management practices throughout the county. The district's work can be found in many places around the city, from Pilsen to its own treatment plants.
Hey, I'm sorry to interrupt you. We are running low on time. I did want to ask a question. Yep. With your green infrastructure and your bioswales and rain gardens, are you experiencing similar hurdles that Troy had mentioned regarding maintenance?
That's a good question. And so we partner a lot with other municipalities. And so we'll go ahead and co-fund programs with municipalities, but we really like the maintenance responsibility to be with the asset owner, which is the municipality. And so we have been hearing from a lot of municipalities, including the city of Chicago, that mechanisms are just not in place for this increased maintenance that's required, both to clean the green infrastructure projects, as well as ensuring that the plants grow and mature, and also weeding and providing ongoing maintenance. So yeah, we have been that's one of the downsides of green infrastructure, but it can provide a lot of benefits. And I know here in the city of Chicago, we've come together and worked with a Green Corps, and so we take what's the word I'm looking for? Disadvantaged individuals, and trade them how to maintain green infrastructures and set up this Green Corps that goes around. So we employ people to go around and maintain these green infrastructure
Great.
programs. Mm-hmm.
Maybe they can come to Sioux Falls.
Yes.
Hey, with just a few minutes left, I'd like to take the last opportunity for all of our panelists to maybe touch on the greatest investment in infrastructure that our country's ever seen through the bipartisan infrastructure law. Maybe each of you could talk about a project that you have in mind that you think is going to be managing stormwater. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a stormwater project, right? It could be transportation related. It could be climate related. Just touch on something that your community might be looking forward to in regards to BIL funds.
I can get started, and I want to just limit it to BIL funds. We talked about earlier today just partnering with your community, so partnering with local governments, partnering for us with the district, partner with Cook County. We partner with any municipality that wants to implement a stormwater solution. For one recent example is IDOT is redoing one of their streets. It goes through a town. They noticed that somewhere somebody altered the land, and so a creek that was flowing to the CalSag channel is now flowing into our TARP system. So obviously that's not a good thing. So we're partnering with them. So as they go ahead and make this improvement with their street, we'll go ahead and rechannelize the flow back to the CalSag channel. So it's important that everybody has a stake in the outcomes of stormwater. So to partner together with people and leverage both your capital as well as your talents to find these improvements that are necessary and then go and act on them.
That's good insight. Thanks, Lou. Tim?
We have a project that's in design. It's called Stinky Creek, and that's the name of it, Stinky Creek. And basically, it's a water quality and quantity problem. On the south side of town, we have a water flooding issue. So basically, we're putting in a new stormwater interceptor. I think it's 72 inches. And it's a big project, but we're using some of the funds from that was given through SRF, and but I was able to push in water quality as part of the project, and you can't treat the water going through the main interceptor, but all the laterals going into that interceptor will be treated. So that's the project I'm proud of, that a good part of town will now be quantity and quality treated.
That's exciting for you guys in Hobart. My guess is Stinky Creek runs into Deep River. Is it? Yeah. Troy?
Yeah, so I guess one of the major projects that the city of Sioux Falls has going right now, or will be soon, is we are building a new byway around the southeast portion of the city, kind of connecting it to another highway on the east side of town. And that area goes through notoriously wet ground. With a very high water table. So this project, originated probably 20 plus years ago with, right-of-ways and land acquisitions and, all the reporting and the surveying and everything that goes along with these large infrastructure projects. And I won't say anything specifically as far as any of the new funding, but obviously that's all tied together. But I think the most important thing is when you're doing these larger projects is how you can filter in these, smaller scale green infrastructure ideas and encompass some of those systems in these overall larger infrastructure projects. Because when it comes down to it, the green infrastructure, when you're looking at these large projects, are likely going to be the first thing to get cut when things go over budget. So if you can design it in a way where it's just functional to that project, I think that is going to be the most effective way to get green infrastructure, in a community. In a community. So
that's a great story, Troy. A project started 20 years ago finally gets to go. Listen, appreciate all of your attention very much. All of us will be standing outside if you have more questions. I think that some of us or most of us will be able to stick around. I don't want you to come out and miss the last session either. So feel free to reach out to any of us if you want to learn more about our programs. Appreciate all of your attention. Ken, thank you.